Some people carry their whole lives in the way they stand. You can see it if you know what to look for. The way their feet find the floor without thinking. The way their eyes move before their head does. The way they don't take up space. They hold it. Reginald Cobb was that kind of man. 57 years old. Wore the same gray work jacket every day. The kind you buy at a hardware store, not a clothing brand. Drove an '09 Silverado with a cracked side mirror he'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. Showed up to Kinston County Fitness at 5:45 every morning, right when the lights were still warming up, when the floor still smelled like the cleaning crew. He'd stretch for 10 minutes, work the heavy bag for 20, cool down, and be gone before the first wave of after-work regulars even knew he'd been there. Nobody knew his name for the first 3 months. They called him the old guy, or sometimes the quiet one by the bags. The front desk girl, Tamara, knew his name because he filled out the membership card, but even she admitted later that she'd never looked at it twice. That was fine with Reginald. He wasn't there to be seen. He was there because his doctor had told him his blood pressure was sitting at 148/94, and if he didn't find something to do with his body, he was going to end up on 3 medications instead of 1. He was there because his daughter Rochelle lived 40 minutes away and called every Sunday, and he didn't want her to get a different kind of call someday. He was there because a man who'd spent 30 years doing what he'd done needed somewhere to put it, all of it, somewhere it couldn't hurt anyone. So he came. He worked. He left, and nobody paid him much attention, until Devonte Marsh walked through the door. Devonte was 29. He'd made regional in boxing 2 years running, placed second at state the year before that, and had the kind of build that made people step aside in grocery store aisles without really knowing why. He trained hard, genuinely hard. Nobody could take that from him. But he had learned somewhere along the way that training hard and letting everyone know about it were the same thing. They were not. But nobody around him had ever told him different. He came to Kinston County Fitness because his usual gym was being renovated and a buddy had a membership there. He wasn't planning to stay long. He made that clear the first morning he walked in, looking around at the equipment the way you look at a motel room. Functional, fine, temporary. He noticed Reginald almost immediately. Not because of anything impressive, the opposite, actually. Reginald was at the heavy bag, working a rhythm left, left, right, roll, left. Same combination, over and over. No flash, no speed bursts, just that slow, methodical pattern, the bag barely moving. Devonte watched for maybe 4 seconds, the way you watch a ceiling fan, and looked away. "Old head's been here since I walked in," he said to his buddy Trell, not quietly. "What's he doing, physical therapy?" Trell laughed. Reginald's bag kept swinging its small, steady arc. He didn't look over. He never looked over. That was the thing about Reginald. He had this quality, this absolute stillness in his face when other people were talking about him, that you could almost mistake for not hearing. But his eyes moved. Not fast, not dramatically. Just a small, slow shift, the way water changes direction underground. He heard everything. He always had. Devonte fell into a routine over the next 2 weeks. He came in mid-morning, after the early crowd cleared. He had the energy of someone who expected to be the most interesting thing in any room, and at Kinston County Fitness he usually was. He was good. He knew it. The younger guys started watching him work, asking questions, hovering near his corner, the way young men hover near anyone who seems to have figured something out. Reginald was always there when Devonte arrived. Always, at the bags, or working a slow circuit with the weights. Nothing heavy, nothing showy. Twice, Devonte came in to find Reginald already cooling down, towel on his shoulder, water bottle in hand, that gray jacket folded on the bench. "You're here every day," Devonte said one morning. It wasn't really a question. "Most days," Reginald said. "How long you been training?" Reginald seemed to consider this, not the answer, but whether the answer was worth the conversation. "Long time," he said. Then he picked up his jacket and walked toward the exit. Devonte watched him go. Something about it scratched at him. Not anger, exactly. More like a low-grade irritation, the kind you can't quite locate. He brought it up to Trell that afternoon. "That old dude doesn't say 2 words to anybody," he said. "Just shows up, does his little thing, leaves. Some people are just private," Trell said. Nah. Devonte shook his head. It's something else, like he thinks he's above talking. Trell looked at him. Or maybe he just doesn't need to talk. Devonte didn't say anything back, but the scratch didn't go away. It happened on a Thursday. There were maybe 12, 15 people in the gym. More than usual for that time of morning. Someone had brought a speaker, and there was music going, the kind that makes the room feel bigger. Devonte had been having a good session, fast hands, sharp combinations, a couple of the younger guys watching and nodding. He was feeling himself. He'd watched Reginald come in at his usual time, do his usual thing. But today, for whatever reason, maybe the music, maybe the audience, maybe just the accumulation of 2 weeks of that low-grade scratch. Devonte decided to say something. He waited until Reginald was working the bag. Then he walked over, casual, arms crossed, head tilted. Hey. He didn't say the name. He hadn't bothered to learn the name. You ever actually spar? Or just hit the bag your whole life? Reginald stopped the bag with one hand, looked at Devonte. His face didn't change. I've sparred, he said. Yeah? Devonte smiled, and it was a particular kind of smile, the one that's not really friendly, but uses the shape of friendly. You want to go a few rounds? Nothing serious, just for fun. The room got a little quieter without anyone deciding to make it quieter. That thing happened that happens in a gym when two men are about to figure out where they stand. People kept moving, but their attention shifted. I'm not really looking for fun, Reginald said. Come on. Devonte spread his hands. Old school versus new school. I'll take it easy. That was the sentence. I'll take it easy. The room heard it. Reginald heard it. Everyone understood what it meant. That Devonte saw something negligible in front of him, something that needed handling gently, like a child, or a small animal, or someone's grandfather at a family cookout. Reginald looked at him for a long moment. Not studying him, he'd been studying him for 2 weeks without appearing to. This look was something else. Something that almost looked like a decision being made. All right, he said. Few rounds. Devonte got his gloves from his bag with the particular efficiency of someone who knows exactly where everything is. He wrapped his hands fast, smooth. He bounced on his feet while he waited. The younger guys gathered. Trell pulled out his phone. Reginald moved slowly, took his time getting his gloves on. An older pair. The leather dried and soft, not stiff like new equipment. No performance in his preparation. He rolled his neck once, settled his shoulders. They touched gloves in the center of the floor, Devonte barely making contact before pulling back, already moving. He came forward fast, and Reginald wasn't there. It's the only way to describe it. Devonte threw a jab-cross combination, textbook, quick, and Reginald had moved before it landed, not dramatically, not with any wasted motion. 2 small steps, a roll at the shoulders, and he was somewhere else. Devonte blinked, reset, came again. Reginald slipped it, not blocked, slipped. The punch went past his ear so close you could hear the air move. Someone in the back said, "Oh." Devonte adjusted. He was good at adjusting. That was the real mark of a fighter. Not the opening move, but what you do when the opening doesn't work. He tried to get Reginald moving backward, pressing, cutting off angles. For about 30 seconds he thought it was working. Then he threw a left hook with real intent behind it, the kind that ends conversations. Reginald caught his arm. Not blocked, caught. His right hand closed around Devonte's forearm, just past the wrist, and in a movement that seemed to happen separately from time, Devonte found his own momentum turning against him, his balance gone, the floor suddenly relevant in a way it hadn't been before. He didn't fall. Reginald let him find his feet. But the room knew what had just happened. Trell lowered his phone. Devonte came back in. He was quieter now. Not scared. Not broken, just recalibrating the way a serious person recalibrates when they hit something they didn't expect. He moved more carefully. He tried to read what he was looking at. But reading Reginald Cobb was like reading water. Every time Devonte thought he had the pattern, Reginald adjusted, not to beat him, not to humiliate him, but just enough to stay exactly 1 step outside wherever Devonte was trying to go. For 3 rounds it went like this. Devonte threw combinations that landed on nothing. Devonte moved laterally and found Reginald already there, already gone. Devonte tried to use his speed, and Reginald simply didn't need speed. because he already knew where things were going before they got there. At the end of the third round, they stopped, both breathing hard. Devonte significantly harder. The room was quiet. Devonte took his mouthguard out. He stared at Reginald, not with anger anymore, but with something more complicated. The look of a man who just learned that a map he's been trusting was missing a mountain range. "Where did you train?" he said. Reginald pulled his gloves off slowly. Didn't answer right away. "You ever heard of Fort Bragg?" he said. Devonte waited. Spent 8 years there. Reginald set his gloves on the bench. After that, 18 months at Pendleton. Then I was with a unit out of Lejeune for 4 years. We were deployed twice. The room heard the names: Fort Bragg, Pendleton, Lejeune, military installations, all of them. Different branches, different training pipelines, different definitions of what a man's body needed to be capable of. After I came back, Reginald continued quiet, unhurried, like he was remembering something that had happened to someone else. I spent 6 years teaching close-quarters combat to special operations candidates, hand-to-hand, defensive tactics, weapon disarmament. He paused. A lot of them were your age. Nobody said anything. I didn't do this for fun back then, he said. I did it because if I didn't teach it right, those boys could end up dead. Devonte stood there with his mouthguard in his hand. It was Trell who spoke first, quietly. To nobody in particular, he didn't know. What happened after that wasn't dramatic. There was no big speech, no public apology, no moment of crowd-pleasing theater. That's not how it works when something real happens to a person. Devonte sat down on the bench. He looked at the floor for a while, then he looked up at Reginald, who was pulling on his gray jacket the same way he always did, the same slow, unhurried way. I was out of line, Devonte said. Reginald paused, looked at him. Yeah, he said. Not mean, not triumphant, just honest, the way honest people are honest. Can I ask you something? Reginald waited. Why didn't you say anything before? When I was, Devonte stopped. He didn't finish the sentence, because the end of it was, when I was being an idiot. Reginald thought about this. He zipped his jacket halfway. Saying something doesn't teach anything, he said. A man has to feel the lesson. That's how I learned. That's how most people learn. He picked up his water bottle. You felt it. He started toward the door. Mr. Cobb? Devonte said the name without knowing he'd learned it. Somewhere in the weeks of watching and not watching, he'd picked it up. Reginald stopped, turned a little. Would you? Devonte took a breath. Would you be willing to work with me sometime? Not spar, train, like actually teach me. Reginald looked at him for a long moment, the kind of look that goes somewhere, past the arms and the record and the regional titles, down into the thing underneath. You got something to learn, he said. It was a real question. Yeah, Devonte said. I think I got a lot to learn. Reginald didn't smile exactly, but something shifted in his face, something slight, like light changing on a wall. 5:45, he said. Don't be late, and he left. Devonte showed up the next morning at 5:42. He stood outside the entrance, watching the parking lot, until he saw the '09 Silverado with the cracked side mirror pull in slow and easy, like a man who'd never been in a hurry in his life. Reginald got out, saw him there, didn't say anything, walked past him to the door, swiped his card, held it open. They trained for 2 hours. Reginald didn't talk much. When he spoke, he said things once, quietly, and waited. He corrected Devonte's weight distribution at the hips. He showed him how to read the shoulder before the punch. He demonstrated, once, slowly, then at speed, how to use an opponent's forward energy against them. The same thing he'd done the day before, now explained. Devonte was a good student. Better than Reginald had expected, though he didn't say that. You don't tell a man who just learned humility that he's doing well. You let him earn it. At the end of the session, they sat on opposite benches. The gym was still mostly empty. Outside, the sky was getting light. Can I ask you something? Devonte said. You can ask. You knew I was the way I was acting, right? You knew it from the beginning. I knew. Why'd you keep coming back? Why not just avoid me? Reginald looked at the floor. The question sat between them for a moment, not uncomfortable, just weighty. I've been around young men who thought they were the hardest thing in the room their whole careers, he said. Some of them learned, some of them didn't. He paused. The ones who didn't, it cost them. Cost some of them everything. Devonte was quiet. "You're not a bad man," Reginald said. "You're a young man with talent and not enough resistance yet. Talent without resistance is just speed in the wrong direction." Devonte looked at him. "Did somebody say that to you? When you were my age?" Reginald picked up his jacket. "Yeah," he said. "A sergeant I had at Bragg. He was about the meanest human being I've ever met." He almost smiled. "I hated him until I understood him. Then I owed him everything." He stood up. "See you Monday," he said. "This is what I want you to think about." Reginald Cobb walked into that gym with no title, no reputation, no announcement. He wore a hardware store jacket and drove a truck with a broken mirror. He didn't try to be impressive. He didn't need to be. He'd spent 30 years learning things that can't be faked, things that live in the body and the bone and the seconds of real pressure when there's no crowd and no music and no one to impress. He'd learned them the way things are really learned, in difficulty, in fear, in the long repetition of doing something right when everything in you wants to do it easy. And then he walked into a gym where a young man with a big opinion and good hands decided to make him the punchline. He didn't argue. He didn't explain himself. He just waited. Because here's what experience teaches you. If you live it long enough and honestly enough, the truth doesn't need your help. It just needs the right moment. Devonte Marsh was talented. He worked. He had a future. But he had confused visibility with depth, speed with wisdom, confidence with knowledge, and nobody had ever put anything in front of him that he couldn't move through. Not until a 57-year-old man in a gray jacket decided to stand still. That's what this is really about. Not who won, not the 3 rounds on a Thursday morning. It's about what happens when a person finally meets something that doesn't bend to their ego and what they choose to do with that moment. Some men walk away. Some men get defensive. Some men spend years building a story about why the moment didn't count. Devonte sat down and asked to learn. "That's the part that matters. Tell me something. When was the last time something surprised you enough to make you start over? When was the last time you sat across from something bigger than your assumptions and chose to listen instead of argue? Because I think we all have a moment like that, if we're honest. And I think those moments are the ones that change the shape of everything that comes after." If this story made you think about that, if it hit something in you that doesn't quite have a name, leave it in the comments. I read them. I really do. And if you know someone who needs this today, share it with them. Sometimes the right story at the right time is worth more than any advice anyone could give. Until next time, this is Carter Tales, and we'll see you soon.